The Cubo Line and City Gate, Protection and Security to the Nation's Oldest City. A documentary by Donalson and Kaitlyn Rouzie.
Our thesis. The Cubo Line protected St. Augustine from many enemy encounters, while the city gate has a rich history of its exchanges, from ownership to the protesting that took place upon it. Today, the Cubo Line continues to be explored by archaeologists who search for its remains. St. Augustine, the ancient city, standing strong for over 450 years. Several people call this city home and enjoy spending time at its many historic locations, such as the nation's oldest schoolhouse or the still standing strong fort, the Castillo de San Marcos. But what kept the city safe, kept it from falling, so that people of today could still enjoy its historic past? To find out, you'll need to travel back to the year 1702.
An army is marching towards the city of St. Augustine, still under Spanish control. The townspeople have no way to defend themselves. Before this time, from 1565 to around 1671, the city was protected by the fort, Castillo de San Marcos, which would ward off all naval attacks from the harbor. In 1702, a new threat appears, one coming from the land. A Carolinian army invades the city. All the people can do is hide in the fort. For 51 days, the city remains under rule of that army. Finally, the army draws back, due to threats of more Spanish fleets sailing over.
The people of the city knew they had to act fast if they wanted to avoid a repeat of what had just happened. They began to build the Cubo Line. In 1730, the line was completed. A 15-foot wide moat was built along the northern side of the city. Using the dirt from that moat, a line was built about 2.5 feet behind it. The Cubo measured about 4.5 feet in width. The line was named after its several cube or cubo-shaped redoubts, where squads of military soldiers would stand guard to oncoming forces. Using the military strategy of enfilade, all areas of land outside the wall were protected by military fire.
The first attempted attack on St. Augustine after the line was built was in 1729. A Carolinian army led by a man named Captain Davidson attacked natives around the area, but was never able to penetrate the defenses surrounding the city. The second encounter faced by the city came in 1740. James Oglethorpe laid siege to the land around the city, but was never able to get past the defenses of the Cubo Line.
After the city's successful defense against Oglethorpe's troops, the first reconstruction of the city gate occurred. Originally, it was made of wood and would stand as the one way into the city, through what is now St. George Street, until about 1808. In that year, new construction took place to reinforce the Cubo Line and gate due to a growing threat in Georgia. The gate was rebuilt from coquina, a type of limestone formed from bits of shells that had been pressurized into rock. The material was easily found along the coast of Florida, and in using it to rebuild the gate, the city was protected from anyone trying to enter through that spot. Large wooden doors would be attached to the gate, securing the one way in and out of the city. The line was refurbished with palmetto logs along its sides to keep it standing strong, as well as cedar pins to further support it. These reconstructions would be worked on through 1811.
1 year later, in 1812, the Patriot Rebellion, sometimes called the Patriots' War, was raging in the South. Colonists from Georgia tried to enter and raid the city, but could not get in because of the Cubo Line. The final encounter the wall would see would be during the Seminole War in 1834. The Seminoles raided several farms and plantations around the city, burning the surrounding areas to the ground. Their next target would be St. Augustine. Indians tried several times to enter the city, but were never successful due to the defenses of the Cubo Line.
The city of St. Augustine stood strong for several years, protected from encounters by its line. Meanwhile, the gate faced several exchanges, from ownership to the fighting that broke out upon it. After America took over Spanish Florida, much attention was set on the city of St. Augustine. Some colonists wanted to tear down the gate, while others argued that it should stay for historic value. In the year 1880, the masonry of the gate was being cracked and broken from years of neglect. 3 women, whose names were Elizabeth Dismukes, Annie Woodruff, and Rosaline James, would begin to stand on the gate in black mourning dresses to raise awareness for the need to keep the gates. The military would also support the women, and finally, the gates were announced as a historic landmark and would be forever protected under the National Park Service. The women who took part in this bold exchange were later dubbed members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Fast forward to 1990 and on. Just last year, in 2015, the city celebrated 450 years. This year, I was able to meet for an interview with the St. Augustine city archaeologist Carl Halbert and talk about the line and gate. He provided me with several dates and rich information on the Cubo, and even gave photos to the documentary from his own personal exploration of the line. He excavated much of it and uncovered the original line and its logs, showing a window into the past. Even today, exploration continues into the remains of the Cubo that lie under the city's ground. A special thanks goes out to the City of St. Augustine Archaeology Department for the photo courtesy, and Carl Halbert for his wealth of information on the subject.
The Cubo line and gate played a very important part in the history of St. Augustine, and without them, Floridians might not have the city they know and love today, with its beautiful buildings and historic landmarks. While the line and gate may seem like a small thing now, it played a big role in protecting the nation's oldest city.